and welcome to this episode of the DC Life Podcast. Today, we're going to chat with someone about something in the life of our church. Well, today we have another of our Getting to Know You podcasts where we hear the faith journey story of someone from Disciples Church. And today we are joined in the studio by Jasmine Mansfield. Welcome, Jazz.
Thank you.
Hello, Jazz.
And we're particularly excited to have you because you're a good friend of ours and also part of our MCG. But in case you may not be quite too familiar with Jazz, she's married to Callum Mansfield, who is our worship services director. And she's also a mum, a teacher, a dancer. She serves on our children's ministry team. So there is plenty to talk about. But we're going to start at the beginning.
Why not?
So Jazz, tell us about life growing up. Where did life start for you?
Well, I grew up in the Catholic Church. Both mum and dad also grew up in the Catholic Church, which is interesting, considering that they were both born in two different cultures and different countries. And I always had a sense that they're wanting to follow suit, as in bringing us up in the Catholic Church had more to do with doing what they thought was right rather than coming from a love for the Lord. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact, it had a lot to do with the life of faith that was modelled to them as children. So I need to backtrack here because this is part of my story and it is important. But mum's mum is Japanese, so
okay,
she had a life that resembles the history books. When you think about the Hiroshima bomb and the Nagasaki and the bomb in Nagasaki, she was there.
Wow.
So she lived in Nagasaki and she was one of hundreds of thousands of people who was running for their lives, basically. So she was evacuated from her home. And she met my granddad while he was serving as a soldier in the Australian Army. And he promised her a good life back home. And she didn't actually want to go. She has told me that, but her family were very persuasive and obviously assured her you would have a better life there. You look at our country, look at what is going on. And she was very brave and she got on a boat.
Wow.
And she left everything she knew behind. She couldn't speak English. She converted to Catholicism because my granddad was a Catholic and was married in a Catholic church. She committed to raising her kids in the Catholic Church, and she never spoke Japanese again. She never ever spoke Japanese. So that mum and Daryl never learnt how to speak Japanese properly because she recognised the importance of assimilating into the culture and doing what she thought she had to do for her family's sake, I suppose. So being a Christian, like the Catholic faith, she didn't convert to Catholicism because she loved the Lord. She did it because she felt that it was necessary. So my dad, on the other hand, had a very strict Irish upbringing. So his grandparents were, there was immense pressure coming from his grandparents for him and his brother to attend Catholic school as part of following all the rules and regulations of the Catholic faith. So Dad and his brothers attended St. Joseph's in Toowoomba, which was run by the Christian Brothers at the time. And Dad will never tell you that he had a particularly nurturing education experience. It was quite the opposite. He suffered a lot of emotional and physical abuse at the hands of the Christian Brothers. And, the stories are quite shocking. So his sense of what Christ-like leadership looked like was particularly warped, like despicably warped. Not to mention that his mother actually gave birth to a stillborn baby before he was born, and their priest came to the hospital and said to her as she was grieving over her blue baby, "This child was cursed. You are to never think of him again." And if I had known, he actually said this to her, if I had known the baby was going to be, that this was the plan for the baby, I would have come to hospital and strangled it myself. So she never set foot in the church again.
Wow.
And that was it.
Yeah.
That was it. So
Wow.
even though mum and dad had these incredibly diverse backgrounds, what connected them in their Catholic faith was just really two exceptionally tragic and raw examples of how it shouldn't be done.
Yeah.
So fast forward a few decades, and out of tradition's sake, mum and dad decided to continue to raise us in the Catholic Church because that was right. We were baptised, we did our first communion, our confirmation. I remember having to confess my sins to the priest. You know, that was a huge part of our life. We went to church together. There'd be seasons when mum and I would go together. And I remember not wanting to go because I loved Jesus, but because it meant that mum and I had time together. So, yeah, God was never adored in our home. I never remember that he was, we would have times of prayer when there was a crisis situation. And Dad is a storyteller, so he loved to relive Jesus' final moments on earth and what he said. He's quite dramatic in that way, but, you know, church for us was done more out of a sense of duty. And this is how I came to review God myself. This is my part of my own relationship with the Lord. So I remember looking up every Sunday at the statue of Jesus on the cross at the front of the church. It was massive. And it almost felt like the Catholic Church going, "You silly people, look what you did. Goodness sakes."
Wow.
And I remember having this understanding, though, as a child, that I was a sinner. I remember knowing I was a sinner. I remember knowing I was guilty. And I knew that he died for me. But my interpretation of his sacrifice was that I needed to pay him back. I needed to make it worth his while. I needed to repay my debt, essentially. And that was how I lived my childhood. So that,
Wow.
That you owed God something.
Yes,
And so you're always,
absolutely.
righto. Yep.
So growing up, was Jesus anything more than just a man on a cross who you owed? Like, did you talk about Jesus, you know, in your difficult times? You know, like we would now, you know, Jesus is so special and in our hearts and there in every moment. But was that ever your experience as a child?
No. No. Jesus was never discussed at home.
Okay.
It was more just out of a sense of, let's do what's right, let's do what's expected, let's do duty.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, time passed, life got busy. We stopped going to church. Mum and Dad always, encouraged us to pursue our dreams and then subsequently paid for those dreams. And I was really good at ballet. And I was encouraged by my teachers to audition for QDSE, which is the Queensland Dance School of Excellence. And basically, that was my life. I was either at school in a uniform or in pink tights. It was one or the other. I don't remember anything else in between that, really. I remember saying, I'll do the audition. It seems like the natural progression of things. And I remember standing in the audition, looking at the faces of all of these girls around me who I'd known of for years because we constantly competed against each other, and looking at their faces, there was so much fear, there was so much desperation. And I remember having this moment, and to this day I will say it was a God moment, of this intense feeling came over me of, I actually don't want to do this anymore. And it was so strange to me. And I remember it was almost like the Samson, like the strength left me in that moment. I felt like there's a little bit of magic left my body, and I just didn't care anymore. I did the audition, but as it happened, I still got shortlisted, but God knew that if I'd been accepted, that I would have gone, and it wasn't his plan. And it didn't make sense to me till a few years later. I stayed at my old school. Heading into senior, ballet got really quiet. I didn't have a lot of friends because I didn't have time to make them. But I remember one girl, and she genuinely went out of her way to be kind. And she would write me these little sweet notes, and she'd ask me to sit with her friends at lunch, and pretty soon it became the two of us. As it happened, she was actually a Christian, and she invited me to church.
Yay.
Yay! And
How old were you at this point?
so this is in senior, so
Yeah,
11,
okay.
12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember showing up on Sunday in my Sunday best because that's what we did.
Not in the pink tutu.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it was stockings and heels, skirt. I'm not sure. Something, uncomfortable. And I remember being quietly appalled of what I was seeing. There was thongs and there was board shorts. And I thought,
How irreverent.
How irreverent. How disrespectful. But my holier-than-thou approach was quickly diminished when I watched them worship. And I remember thinking, there's real joy here. They were actually enjoying themselves, and there was this real sense of freedom. I didn't understand it, so I decided to keep coming back because it looked really good. I'd started reading a little bit, and obviously attending church weekly now, and it was just an ordinary day. And I remember grabbing my Christian suit for the teenage soul, which someone had given me years before, and it sat on my bookshelf. It was dusk, and I'd gone out with this book to lie on the trampoline and read, and we lived on a huge property in the middle of nowhere. You can imagine, it was pretty beautiful, and I remember reading, and I don't know the story. I can't remember what story it was, but I remember something clicked in that moment, and I lowered the book to my chest and I looked up at the sky, and I just remember saying, "You love me, don't you? You really love me." And it was like all my life I understood the seriousness of my sin and that I needed saving. The Catholic Church are really good at John 3:16, which says,
For God so loved the world.
He gave his only son. Whoever believes will not perish but have eternal life. But I needed to hear the next verse. And that says that God didn't send his son into the world to condemn it. He came to save it. And I realized in this moment that I wasn't condemned. I was actually precious and loved. And he knew already I couldn't clear my debt. That's why he sent his son. But he sent his son because he loved me. And that's what was missing as a child, looking up at this statue of Jesus going, okay, you did that for me because it was your duty. That's how I saw it. It was your duty to do what was right. Now I need to try and live up to that. But it just flipped on its head that afternoon. Like, I don't need to do a thing because it's already been done. And so, yeah, that was a freedom, a freedom there. And
so who did Jesus become after that man hanging on that cross looming over you at the Catholic Church? Who was he now?
He lit a fire in my heart that afternoon. I remember just feeling an overwhelming sense of love for him. I would say that was my saving moment. He took the scales off my eyes. My heart softened to him. I just understood it for the first time. And it changed my life because I started serving in the church immediately. I was actually on the worship team, which is crazy. I started singing on the worship team. I started serving in the soup kitchen for the homeless. I started helping old people in their gardens, and I started attending a small group, and I gave my testimony at church. So it changed my life.
Very cool.
That's cool. Great. It's. I think grace was just there. It is, and you understood it. That's amazing. Now, can you confirm that you were a real Disney princess as part of your kind of story? Tell us about that, please.
Well, God in his kindness actually allowed me to pursue those dancing dreams in the end anyway.
Right.
So I actually did, yes, I did travel. I got 3 degrees and I got an agent and I did commercials and I was in some music video clips and I was in some shows, and yes, I did get to go to Disneyland. I was Snow White and I was Sleeping Beauty and Mary Poppins. That was my rotation. So yes, thankfully there were wigs involved. So,
and you'll put up those photos later on the Google web so we can see. Was it through the dancing and stuff that you met Cal? Like, where does he fit into the story?
yes, that's right.
Yes. He was dancing too, but he wasn't a Disney princess, was he?
No, definitely wasn't. No, I auditioned for a show that he was choreographing, which was Cats. So,
Oh, yeah, that's the one where nothing makes sense.
exactly. Yeah. Yes, I remember this very attractive, very handsome man, and there was an audition process. I will always say to people, I got in before we knew each other, so I didn't get in because we were already an item. I got in, and that was a turning point in my life. I think there was, it was a really cool time. It was a really cool time in my life. I was working as a high school teacher, and I remember he was lovely, and he would do this thing every time we would meet before the show. It would take us an hour and a half to do our makeup because obviously you're transforming into a cat. So we would all sit around makeup, lights, and we'd have 50 things in front of us. And he would come around every night to every single person and ask them how they were. And I remember thinking it was just so lovely. He really cared. He really cared about everyone. And, as he choreographed the show, I remember thinking, how clever he was and how talented he was, but also he had a lovely smile, and he was just delightful to be around. So, yeah. We didn't date for a long time after that, but I definitely liked him. And, it wasn't until the show after that we started started a relationship, but then I got the contract to be a Disney princess. So I actually left for 8 months, and most of our relationship was distance.
Yeah, we know what that's like.
Yeah, we can.
Yes, you do. Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. And so you go off to Japan,
Yes.
Disneyland, Disney
Yes.
World,
Disney.
and then you come back, and then you get married
Pretty much.
at some point?
Yes.
Yeah.
A couple of months later, I think he proposed.
Cool.
So,
And now you have 3 boys.
yes.
Not one, not 2. 3. And they're delightful. What has being a mum taught you?
Being a mum has taught me being a mum is a mirror, I think, to your own sin. I feel like, we should know our testimony, and I always was scared that I didn't know it for mission's sake. But the more my kids grow, the more I realise that I'm on mission every day, and that I get to gospel my children multiple times a day, and how to live a life that glorifies Him, to make Jesus the centre of everything that we do. And when there's a problem, where do we go? Where do we turn to first? And how to see life's trials in light of Him. So, yeah. I don't know if that answers the question.
Well, what a great setting for that with, 3 boys and lots of bumps and bruises. You get lots of opportunities to, to see God's kindness and comfort amidst all of those things. So Callum is obviously still working as a choreographer, and you're teaching a couple of days a week, and you've got your 3 boys. It's a very hectic pace of life. How do you both cope?
Well, I think particularly at the moment, actually, we're in a very busy season. I feel like that's a bit of a cliche thing to say because everyone's busy, and we live in a busy church, and a lot of us have children and work, and that alone is busy. But particularly at the moment, we've had a very busy season with a lot of big life changes. We've had funerals in our family and weddings in our family in a very short space of time. Callum and I have been to the hospital twice this week with kids in emergency departments, and there's a lot of changes, and Callum's work, particularly at the moment, is very hectic. I think it's been a huge season of, I think God in his kindness has been, because he loves me, teaching me how to trust him in the chaos. And I've felt his gentle leading in a variety of situations. Even today, actually, I was in the emergency department with Theo, who broke his finger, fractured it and broke it. And, we've got gas, we've got manipulation of bones and a child screaming. And I knew in that moment, watching him, that he needed me to be strong. He needed me to be, to have peace and to... I'm so grateful to God for giving me the strength to be that for him in those moments. And then afterwards we had this lovely chat about how we are so blessed that even when unexpected things happen in life, we can trust that God is in control and that he's good and that it's not a surprise to him. And we were just marveling at how wonderful that was today in hospital, and he was nodding away, It's like we don't need to have all the answers, and things can hurt and things can change very quickly, but God is sovereign and he's not surprised and he loves us. And it's I'm grateful. It's been a big few weeks, but I'm grateful for the lessons. So.
What's on the horizon for you guys? Any big plans?
Life will change a lot soon. Well, depends on COVID, but Callum's shows are starting to pick up speed again, and that means a lot of travel. So technically at the end of the year we're meant to be in Sydney and Adelaide back to back for about a month, which will be a shock to the system because we've had sort of
been a while, hasn't it?
A while. And I have really enjoyed not having to travel. I love it, but I also have really appreciated being home, actually be able to start a garden and do things that you usually only do when you're there for long enough, and do projects around the house and things like that. So in terms of life changes, life will go back to normal in the sense of we're home and then we're on tour and then we're home and then we're on tour. So, but it's been a big year. We've got two at school now, so that in itself has been a big change as well. Life just keeps moving. So,
Well, we get to see you and Callum most weeks serving at church, at Disciples Church, either in the worship team or in the children's ministry, where you do a beautiful job with the kids of our church. Tell us a bit about your journey of coming to and what you do at DC.
I would never say that I'm a particularly gifted teacher, but it's what I studied. And I think God is.
You said
just
you had 3 degrees.
Yeah,
I have 3.
You kind of just
you enjoy studying.
Brushed over that. So that's an education degree.
Yes.
Is there a Disney degree? 2. What are the other 2?
Mary Poppins.
I have 2 bachelor degrees one is in dance and one is in secondary education, and then a master's in education as well. So
a very talented
I'm
teacher is what I'm hearing.
I'm qualified to teach. So honestly, I'm very passionate about it, about teaching kids, particularly in dance. I enjoyed that before I became a mum. I haven't really done that, I'd say, properly since having kids. But I don't know. I think it's more of a, there's a need and I can do this, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And there is actually a real need at the moment for, good teachers, and we have such a huge cohort of children, as you know.
Do. Yes.
And so coming to DC, you were, you and Cal, this was after you married and so forth, and I think he's from a Presbyterian background or something. And anyway, you guys hooked up, got married, and when did you come to DC?
We were there for the first public service.
From the beginning?
Wow.
Yes.
There you go.
We walked in and
Great.
Fiona greeted us and she gave me a huge hug, and I remember thinking, and I've said this before, I remember thinking, oh gosh, I know her and I've forgotten who she is, because she was so warm and welcoming. Theo was 5 months old at the time. He was the first baby ever in creche. Steph would come out personally to pick Theo up, and she was always very happy when we were there because it meant she actually had something to do. I don't know if it's not quite the same these days. She's got more than she can handle some weeks, but no, she's incredible. But yeah, Theo was the first baby. He was the first to be dedicated at DC as well. And then Andy and Caleb joined him soon after. But yeah.
So you will have been a part of probably a few different MCGs throughout your time, or at least they've probably looked different if you've been at DC for that long. Tell us about that.
I think.
How have things changed?
Was there one at the start? I'm not sure. We were in the Sligers MCG, and then we stayed with them, and then the group split. But I think we stayed with the Sligers. Gosh, this could be so wrong. And then we switched to your group. Yeah.
Yeah, because there was a multiplication. And
Yes.
then, yeah, that's right.
Another split, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Multiply.
And we got you. We were the lucky ones.
Yeah, no, it's been lovely to, yeah.
Tell us, what's the biggest challenge you face regularly in following Jesus?
George, you'll know this already.
There's a lot of people listening, Jazz, and there's a lot of people that are going to benefit from your encouragement.
Well, I hope so. I definitely idolize control. I like to feel as though I am in control, and I know that I'm not, but I enjoy being organised, and I enjoy feeling like I have, that I have things lined up well, and things are, working well in our family life and home life and work life, and what was the question? I've totally forgotten.
Your biggest challenge.
Yeah.
And you kind of,
this is a big challenge for me. Yeah, I'm there. Okay, so I think definitely something that I struggle with is this idea of control and having a sense of order. So that's not a bad thing. I know that that's not a bad thing. God himself is a God of order, not chaos. But I think, it's what Paul Tripp says. You can take a good thing and make it a bad thing if you make it a God thing or a ruling thing. And essentially that's where sin comes from, isn't it? This, and in my case, I can take it a little too far, and I can sort of try to control things in my life. And I'm aware always that I'm not actually in control. But God in his kindness, I think, over the years, and particularly now as a mum of 3, is slowly releasing my grip on this idea that I'm in control, that and not only releasing it, but reassuring me that he is in control. I can let go. And it may mean that things don't look the way that I want them to, but the things that I'm placing my happiness or my rest in actually can't provide me happiness or rest. And I believe the lie often that, if I can just get this job done, I will feel rest, but it is a lie because it doesn't come. And that's because only he is my rest. And so if I'm created by God, then I need to remember that my rest comes in spending time with him, in his word. And, in his kindness, I think he's really sort of wringing it out of me at the moment. And I've kind of mentioned it already in the podcast, but just this idea of trusting him when things don't make sense and things are out of my control, like the week we've just had, and being able to say, you know what, he is in control. He's got it. He actually does.
Yeah. And look, thank God for that.
God. Yes. Plans are only ever as good as the one who makes them, and I'm very glad that he is making them and not me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jazz, for coming in and sharing just a bit of your story with us.
You're welcome.
I'm very keen to see some of these photos of your earlier years, and it's been great to do life with you. So thank you for coming and sharing your story with us.
Same to you. Thanks, guys.
If you'd like more information about what's going on at Disciples Church, check out our website or email us at podcast@disciples.org.au if you have any questions or feedback. Thanks for listening in. We'll catch you next time.